My daughter will be using my mother-in-law's room, so from now on, please sleep in the garden. I never imagined that I would suddenly be kicked out of the house right after Ethan's wedding. Ethan, estranged from us due to a prolonged period of rebellion, made a surprise appearance with his wife and children at the wake and funeral. However, Cindy and the children behaved as they pleased, showing blatant disregard for those around them. I remember being completely speechless. It was too much for them to suddenly burst into the house and declare that from now on they would live here and I was to sleep in the garden. But on second thought, perhaps it was good timing. I was just thinking about something. Well, I'll leave then. Please feel free to leave. And then Cindy, who probably intended to dump all the housework on me and live happily ever after, panicked, which was ridiculous. After this outrageous behavior, I wanted to say, "Don't think you're going to have it your way. I'm Kelly, turning 75 this year. Although I now lead a penniless life, I used to work tirelessly every day, fascinated by the honesty of numbers that never lie. I aspired to master the world of numbers and pursued a career as a tax accountant. At the time, I was studying to be a tax accountant while working as a regular office worker. The exam days were tough, but I passed it on my third attempt, which even surprised me. After deciding to change jobs, I met my husband through an acquaintance. My husband and I have been separated for 5 years now, and looking back, I think he was pretty selfish. If someone asked me if I would remarry, I would immediately say no. I remember him saying that he liked women who put the man first. He was sure his word was absolute, but he could never get me to quit my job because I was earning a little more. At that time, female tax accountants were in demand, and I felt fulfilled in my job too. So I continued to work even after giving birth to 2 sons. In an era when women rarely worked in the society, my husband allowed me to continue working on one condition. I must never mention that I worked as a tax accountant in the presence of others. This was probably to protect his pride, and it even applied to our children. He seemed to constantly tell our kids that I was just a full-time office worker for the company. Surprisingly, both of my sons believed this for many years. But at some point I began to worry about my son. Of my 2 sons, the younger Tim wasn't so bad in his rebellious phase, but Ethan, the older one, was out of control. During his rebelliousness, he intensified and began to ridicule my work, its content, and even my very existence, probably reflecting his father's attitude. What's with this side dish? It's unreasonable to be satisfied with just this. This includes stir-fried meat with vegetables, salad, pickles. I don't think it's a weird menu, but is it not enough? I have some frozen pasta if you want more frozen pasta. Ethan gasped at the mention of frozen food. Are you trying to deceive me with frozen food? Then Ethan glanced at his father and sneered unpleasantly. Mom, you're trying to take the easy way out even though you're just a part-timer. My husband just silently continued eating his meal, and seeing that, I lost the energy to retort. Is this something a child should say to a parent? Even in a rebellious phase, I didn't know how to deal with Ethan anymore, and eventually limited my interactions with him to the bare minimum. Then, taking advantage of this, Ethan's rebellious phase worsened, maybe because we hadn't had a proper conversation for years. Ethan moved to a neighboring state for college right after high school graduation. He left the house as if fleeing and never properly returned home. Since then, he occasionally came back for certain reasons, but always timed it when I was not around or sneaked in late at night. It seemed that he really didn't want to see me. Ideally, my husband should have intervened as a father, but dealing with the children was seen as my job, and he maintained an indifferent attitude. I began to think that maybe this was the fate of a mother with 2 sons. Tim married a woman he had been dating since college and moved far away and hardly ever shows his face here. Although Ethan lives nearby, he seemed to avoid me. Our family was disjointed, but a significant change occurred upon my husband's death. When I informed them about the wake and funeral, Tim couldn't attend due to an unavoidable commitment, but Ethan said he would come. I couldn't hide my surprise that Ethan, who had been avoiding me all this time, agreed to attend. Given the severe rebellious phase Ethan had, I couldn't predict how it would go. Seeing his face after so long, he might still act like he's in his rebellious phase, or perhaps he might have mellowed out. Even if he showed the same openly hostile demeanor as before, I doubted he would go too far with relatives around. With a let-it-be mindset, I awaited the day. Despite the approaching appointed time, Ethan was nowhere to be seen. As I fretted alone, I saw a procession walking up, led by Ethan. The group stopped right in front of me. Then Ethan looked at me and smirked. "Hey, Mom, it's been a while since we met. At the wake, might as well have a chat, huh?" "What are you talking about? Just relax." Then he was gesturing to the line formed behind him. He declared loudly, "Mom, I'm getting married properly this time, and I'll protect my beloved family." I was taken aback, as I hadn't expected such a declaration so soon upon arrival at the wake. Indeed, it was a joyous occasion, but was this the right moment to announce it? Then, stepping forward from the line, a woman stood beside Ethan. "Nice to meet you. I'm Cindy. We plan to get married next week, so we wanted to inform you." At first glance, she seemed like a normal woman. Given Ethan's notoriously bad behavior, it was somewhat surprising. "Oh, nice to meet you, Cindy." The woman introducing herself smiled nonchalantly, as if not bothered by the wake setting. Her smile, which seemed to ease people's weariness, and her well-kept semi-long black hair made a striking impression. I felt like being swallowed by her pace, but decided to boldly ask Cindy, "Wait a minute, so you're not married to Ethan yet? And what's this line all about?" With a look that seemed to say, "Is that what you're worried about?" Cindy continued smoothly, "Of course, it's a child we will raise together. I've always dreamed of a large family, so I'm very happy Ethan will become a dad." "No, that's not what I meant." I wasn't interested in hearing about Cindy's family aspirations yet. Cindy seemed oblivious to my confusion, continuing to smile warmly. "When did you start living like this? And didn't you used to say you didn't want to get married because you didn't want to lose your freedom or something?" Ethan, who boasted he would never marry, is now a father to a large family. I was so surprised I couldn't find the words. As I pondered what to do, Ethan spoke up. "I've always been all about work, but finally I found something I want to protect. Cindy's kids, but to me, they're my own." He said this with a snort of pride. After meeting Ethan, he switched jobs, so now we both work at different places. Despite her constant smile, there was something unsettling about Ethan and Cindy's nonchalant attitude. I was hired as a nursing assistant at a nursing home, and the job was really tough. Ethan was the one who reached out to me during those times. "You know I'm not the neglectful type, right, Mom?" Ethan said, calling me Mom for the first time in perhaps decades. It's a common way for a child to address their parent, but it gave me a strange chill. Then, pretending not to notice my discomfort, Ethan asked, "We can take some of the appetizers over there, right?" He pointed to the food prepared for the wake, meant to be served later, not now. "This food is for the mourners at the wake. It's not appropriate for family members to start eating before the wake has even begun." When I gently interjected, Cindy cheerfully addressed the children behind her. "But in the end, we're all going to eat it, right? So technically, we could eat it now." Well, we'll eat the leftovers later. Go ahead and eat before it starts. This is dinner for today." With that, the children began to grab at the appetizers. 6 kids, an astonishing number. Are these Ethan's children? No. What's more shocking is their terrible manners. One child only ate the sauced parts of the fried chicken, leaving the rest on the tray, while another poked at the food, exclaiming, "This looks gross." Ew, the venue for my husband's wake and funeral turned into a chaotic scene like something out of a nightmare. With the wake yet to start, almost none of the appetizers were left to serve. Only bits of half-eaten food remained, speechless with shock. I watched as Cindy turned to explain, "These kids are from a previous marriage of mine. Ethan has kindly accepted them as his own. Having met various people, I've never heard of such a large group coming to a wake and ravaging the food." Yet Ethan and Cindy made no move to stop them, even praising, "Good appetite, eat up." Just thinking about what the wake and funeral would become if left unchecked was terrifying. I devised a plan to send them home early, Look, the kids have school or something tomorrow, right? It'll be tough if you stay too late, won't it? That's not a problem. Also, is dessert not ready yet? Everything's been so salty, we need something sweet to finish off. Her response left me dizzy. I couldn't back down now. You know, little kids can get stressed out in unfamiliar environments when they're not seen. If you insist that much, guess we have no choice. I politely explained and managed to send them home for the day. However, Ethan and Cindy's disregard for common sense didn't end there. They showed up at the funeral the next day in casual clothes like sweatshirts and jeans. It's a funeral. There should be some black or formal clothes for the kids. But their senselessness didn't stop there. During the funeral, kids were playing games, reading comics, and watching videos on smartphones. One was even live streaming while the monk was chanting sutras. I couldn't believe the adults were letting them do whatever they wanted without any intervention. I repeatedly tried to correct them but was met with eye rolls and ignored. I tried to get Ethan and Cindy to leave at the right moment, but it was like talking to a wall. Then Ethan, protecting his children, glared at me. "What's wrong with you treating my sons and daughters like this? That behavior is unacceptable." At both the wake and the funeral, anyone would scold them, not just me. Cindy, who had been watching our exchange, finally spoke up. "Well, they're just kids. Please be more lenient. It'll be something to laugh about later." She chuckled softly, covering her mouth with her hand. I was filled with disbelief. "They're just kids. Something to laugh about later." Those are things someone else might say to console, not something parents should be saying about their own children's behavior. I prioritize non-punitive parenting, so it really bothers me to see my mother-in-law scolding the children without restraint. "Please stop." Cindy's eyes were not smiling. As the chief mourner at my husband's funeral, I wanted to send him off properly. Having his funeral ruined and then facing this treatment was too much. But given what had happened the day before, I realized that saying anything to Ethan, Cindy, or their rampaging kids would be futile. I had no deep relationship with Ethan's family and their children. I didn't even know Ethan was married with kids until it was mentioned. I'm fed up with these people. I decided minimal contact would suffice. One day, about 6 months after that funeral, my doorbell rang. Thinking it might be a delivery, I opened the door to an unbelievable scene. Ethan, Cindy, the children who wreaked havoc at the wake and funeral, and an unfamiliar woman who looked much younger than me, were standing there. All 9 of them lined up in front of my house. "Hi, Mom, we're home," Ethan said as they all trooped in, rolling their carry-on bags through my house, trailing mud on the freshly cleaned hallway. "Wait, what's going on? And the mud on the carry-on bags?" I tried to stop them, but nobody paused, turning the hallway black with mud. The children, as loud as ever, critiqued everything from the cheap-looking dresser to the probably old TV. Even the unfamiliar woman at the back started complaining. "It's a bit old, but it'll do well. It's tacky, but it'll keep the rain off. I guess I can put up with it." Unable to stand their brazen behavior and mess any longer, I finally spoke up. "Enough, Ethan, Cindy, and who is this woman?" Cindy, smiling just as she did at the funeral, answered, "Oh, she's my mom. She's having a hard time." The woman called Mom carelessly introduced herself as Sarah while fiddling with her smartphone. "Recently, I went on a shopping spree for new brand bags. I bought so much I couldn't pay. Then Cindy suggested we live together. Lucky me, they thought it would be easy living here. No need to bother with household chores." They exchanged smiles, which seemed eerie to me. "What are you talking about? And what do you mean by no need to do household chores?" "Well, that's exactly what it means. You'll take care of the chores so we don't have to." "So nice to meet you." I couldn't hold back anymore. "Who decided this?" "This is my house." Cindy, trying to calm me down, said, "Mom's room will be used by my daughter, so you'll sleep in the garden starting tonight." "What? Why should I sleep in the garden?" "Well, there's no room inside, you know. If you need, I saw tents for sale at the recycling shop. Should I buy one?" Cindy was deflecting my anger as if soothing a client in a nursing home. "I never said you could live with me in the first place, and this house is just—" As I tried to discuss the house, Ethan turned to me, clearly angered by my reaction. "What's the complaint?" I'm letting you take care of your adorable grandchildren, and cooking prevents dementia, right? I thought letting you cook for everyone would help keep you sharp, Cindy added. Obviously, I had never asked for this. It was clear Ethan and Cindy had unilaterally decided to move in and dump all the inconvenient chores on me. I shook off Cindy's hand and stood up. She stumbled a bit, but I couldn't be bothered. Ouch, what are you doing, Mom? What am I doing? That's my line. What's the problem? Isn't it the greatest happiness to live every day with your adorable grandchildren? I realized talking further was futile to them. I was just a convenient household helper. Well, I'm leaving, so make yourselves at home, huh? I packed my belongings into my familiar bag and prepared to leave. Cindy frantically circled around me, which was annoying, but I focused on packing. Where are you going, Mom? To my place, where I will live. I've sold this one, so I can't stay here anymore. Ethan reacted to my words by grabbing my shoulders and shaking me. Ethan shook me so vigorously, as if he was trying to wake me up, that for a moment I felt like I was getting car sick. He pointed to a photo frame in the corner of the room and then yelled while looking at a picture of my husband. Hey, Mom, what do you mean by sold? This is the house Dad left us. You think it's okay to lose it? Holding the picture of my husband, he melodramatically called out, Dad! He was sentimental, but I felt it was time to tell him the truth. This house was originally bought by me, I said, pointing to the floor, addressing Ethan. Then Ethan looked at me, puzzled, as if he didn't understand what was being said. Huh, what do you mean Mom bought it? You think a woman can't buy a house just like your father? Like father, like son. His absurd thinking made me sigh involuntarily. Well, that's fine if you didn't know. Then you didn't know. What do you mean by that? Ethan looked at me, seemingly unable to grasp the situation. You knew I was working outside, didn't you? You were working as some office clerk, right? Ethan and Cindy seemed utterly perplexed, as if the notion of a woman building her own house was preposterous. Cindy appeared to have decided that I was lying. That's ridiculous. You're saying Mom could afford to buy a house. Impossible. Cindy claps her hands while laughing, like a monkey toy. Cindy's habit of clapping her hands while laughing had always been noticeable to me, but seeing her like this, I found it quite vulgar. Nonetheless, I felt the need to explain, ignoring Cindy's behavior, and continued. I had been working as a tax accountant in an accounting firm for years, so I had some money and thankfully enough credit to buy my own home smoothly. Huh, accounting firm? You never mentioned that? Ethan looked bewildered. Back then, the prices for houses around here hadn't skyrocketed yet. I thought to myself, I can do this. Ethan and Cindy still looked unconvinced, but Dad was the breadwinner, working as the head of the household. And I've never heard of Mom being a tax accountant. I always thought you were just an office clerk. It's too late to talk about it now. Dad had strongly requested it. Strongly requested what? He asked me not to talk much about working as a tax accountant or that I bought the house in my name. Maybe it was his pride. Cindy banged on the table forcefully. Lies! Why did you keep silent? I had no idea. I had a promise with my husband, and there was no need to mention it. It would upset him whenever I talked about my work, so I hardly ever brought it up. What? That can't be true. Ethan glared at me, but I was unfazed. So what if I had told you? I can imagine what you would think anyway then. Cindy, as if trying to steer the conversation, asked, But Mom, where do you plan to go after leaving this house? She might seem like a kind woman concerned about her mother-in-law's well-being. She was probably trying to engage me calmly. However, she was someone planning to take over my home, including her own biological mother, intending to make me like a servant. Being calm with such a person is beyond difficult. Where I go is none of your business, isn't it? You plan to live here, so please feel free. Ethan then spoke to me with a sudden gentle tone, as if flipping a switch. Well, since we're family, shouldn't we at least know each other's whereabouts? What are you going to do by knowing where I am? Plan to take away my living space again? I noticed Ethan becoming flustered. Mom, aren't you worried about what might happen? I'm not worried. I'm going here. I showed him a flyer. Though it was just a simple flyer, Ethan and Cindy looked at it wide-eyed. What do you mean? This is where I work. I had been contemplating what to do with my oversized house and where to spend my final years. About 2 years ago, I became interested in this facility through a flyer that came in the mail, researched it through friends' recommendations and my network, and had been on a waiting list until a vacancy finally opened up. Yes, they offer great services and plenty of recreational activities, so I wanted to give it a try. I got a call about a cancellation 2 weeks ago and have been preparing to move. The care facility was quite luxurious with a reputation for excellent services and gourmet meals, making vacancies rare. Ethan and Cindy started to tremble, perhaps upset by my response. What do you mean? You have the money for that? You're not thinking of spending it on your dear grandchildren. Ethan pointed towards a room where the children were causing a mess. I glanced over to see the kids misbehaving. The wallpapers were punctured with holes, and they were casually charging their electronic devices. Look at them, charging their devices without a care, like electricity thieves. What, calling your grandkids thieves? That's really the end of it, Ethan yelled, but I remained unfazed. For the sake of my dear grandchildren, like at the previous Joaquin funeral, kids who behave shamefully in public are hardly dear to me. Besides, I've only met them twice and can't suddenly think of them as my grandchildren. What do you mean by that? I thought I'd let you take care of the grandkids and cook to prevent dementia. That's right, you should just listen to what the younger generation says, and everything would be resolved. For some reason, even Sarah joined in the counterattack. But I wasn't going to just take it. I will be relinquishing this house, so do as you please. It has nothing to do with me. I said my piece and prepared to leave the house. I ended up transferring my old house to Ethan and his family and moving into the nursing home. Oh, I forgot to say something. What's all the fuss about? If a storm comes, I might let you sleep in the entryway. Well, that's fine. After all, we're offering this out of kindness. Ethan and Cindy exchanged smirks, while Sarah and the grandkids acted indifferent. Though I had more to say, it was pointless with Ethan and the others insisting on living there without listening to me. I had lived alone until now, but found joy and motivation in daily life among people my age and the caretakers. One day, Ethan contacted me on my phone. Hey, the house is falling apart. It's unlivable. His tone implied that I had pawned off some defective merchandise on him. That's why I was looking for a buyer, as if it was a second-hand item. With all the renovations going on, you could have done some refurbishing too. What renovation? Where's the money for that after dumping a defective product on us? Why all the fuss about this? Ethan sounded embarrassed on the phone but hung up quickly. Cindy continued working at the same nursing home after I moved in, likely not wanting to resign just because her mother-in-law had checked in. It seems that the pay at this nursing home is quite good, and people rarely leave unless something significant happens. I don't mind as long as she does her job properly. However, since I've been here, I've only heard concerning stories unlike anything I heard from friends' reviews before. Following up on these stories, it appears Cindy has a poor reputation among both staff and residents. She skillfully avoids difficult tasks with a smile, opting only for the easy ones, which is quite apparent even from a resident's perspective. Her work is sloppy, often redone by others, leading me to wonder why such an incapable person is kept on staff. It turns out she changes her behavior depending on the person being called to, those she dislikes while buttering up those with money or influence, making her seem like a hard worker at first glance. But can one really get by just on the ability to flatter and navigate social situations? When I applied, I wrote my niece and her husband's names in the relative section of the form, so no one inside knows about my and Cindy's in-law relationship. Cindy must sense something, treating me like a complete stranger. Here's your meal, Kelly. Today we have your favorite pan-fried white fish. Thank you, it looks delicious as always. Certainly. Let's continue the translation with attention to detail. Cindy, maintaining her usual demeanor, presented the meal with a smile, not letting on any hint of our familial connection. She consistently performs her duties as a caregiver without any sign that she recognizes me as her mother-in-law, which is quite remarkable. Intrigued by the rumors and stories shared by other residents, I decided to investigate Cindy's hidden side. I followed her during less busy times, such as in the bathroom, the dimly lit dining hall after most had returned to their rooms, and a small room adjacent to the common area. I discovered her routine mistreatment of the residents, including sneaking into rooms of those with difficulty managing personal belongings and stealing items. Appalled, I anonymously reported these incidents to the nursing home management. The management took the report seriously and conducted a thorough investigation, revealing Cindy's misconduct, including boastful posts on social media about her exploits, much of which went unnoticed by the residents themselves. This revelation caused quite a stir within the nursing home community. Ultimately, Cindy was dismissed from her job in a disciplinary action, which likely means she will struggle to find employment in this field or any other for a while. Ethan, affected by the spread of these rumors, appeared to age rapidly due to stress. He had once boasted about his young and capable wife, but those days seemed like a distant memory. After I left the house, Ethan and Cindy, along with their children and Cindy's mother, seemed to live crammed together in the house. I still keep in touch with a friendly neighbor who tells me that loud arguments are frequent, leading to multiple police visits. One day, while I was relaxing in my room at the nursing home, the rattling of the window glass caught my attention, so I opened it to find Cindy there. Cindy, glaring at me with a terrifying face, bore no resemblance to her former self. Her once well-nourished cheeks were now gaunt, her hair strewn with gray and unkempt, and her skin was far from the polished look she once had. Surrounded by brand-name luxuries, she accused me, "It's because of you, mother-in-law, that I'm in such a dire situation." "My fault? What do you mean?" I inquired, confused. What do I mean? "While you sit comfortably pretending everything's fine, I'm in misery because of you," Cindy said, gripping the window frame and shaking it vigorously, causing a loud rattling noise. "What do you mean?" "What? It's because you've strayed from decency, Cindy. How is that my concern?" I responded, her eyes wide as she glared back at me. "I'm the only one right. I'm the one you're treating as an obstacle." "What are you saying? I'm the reason you were fired, but everyone used to listen to me and I was adored at work." She trailed off, seemingly delusional. "It's truly sad you haven't noticed that everyone was avoiding speaking to you." "Sad? What do you mean by that?" Cindy retorted, her hair flailing as she flew into a rage. I stated coldly, leaving that aside, "Did you really think you could continue working without any consequences after what you did?" "Yes, because this place can't function without me. Well, I might overlook it if you retract your snitching and get me back to my original position. You still want to claim you're not at fault? If you feel so strongly, perhaps you should plead your case with the appropriate authorities." I pressed 911 on my smartphone and showed Cindy the call initiation screen. She ran away, probably thinking she would be reported for her behavior. She probably still thinks she did nothing wrong. I am still leading a fulfilling life in the nursing home. Within the nursing home, I've made good friends, and we visit each other's rooms and have fun playing games. At that time, I had some doubts, but now I think it was good to let go of the house where I had lived for many years. Now I feel happy living a good life without worrying about my troublesome eldest son and his wife.